Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. I'm Kamen Entchev here with Tom Casselman. A really fun show today. A lot of stuff to get through. To recap the Nuggets and Lakers series. How in the world did Denver get the sweep? Jokic, Murray were incredible. LeBron talking about retiring. I don't buy it for a second, Tom, but that's on the docket. We're going to see what's going to happen out in the Eastern Conference as well. Miami up 3-0 in that series. Boston finally gets a win. It's 3-1 now. And somehow Vegas thinks that Boston should be an 8-point favorite despite losing both games at the Garden earlier this series. Make it make sense. Betting locks of the week, by the way. We'll have that in the show as well. Little transition to that Celtics-Miami game. But did Jason Tatum get his fourth quarter mojo back, perhaps? Because he was really struggling in the fourth quarter. Did play well in this last game. So we'll talk plenty of NBA. That's the main talking points on the docket. But sports trivia, as always, betting locks of the week. A lot more good stuff coming up, Tom. Cannot wait to get started. How are you doing today on a beautiful, beautiful Wednesday afternoon?
Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous out. I am doing fantastic and feeling especially so because I'll go ahead and say that they're my adoptive team. I've been pulling for the Denver Nuggets for the past couple of seasons now, and it's good to finally see them break through in a way that I think might be more of an indicative trend, perhaps in the NBA, foreshadowing to statements of the week. But yeah, as you mentioned, the Nuggets with a clean sweep over the Los Angeles Lakers. I don't think anybody really had that outside of the Mile High City, even remotely on their radar. I think a lot of people were thinking the greatness of Anthony Davis, the greatness of LeBron James, even looking at that game one and saying, oh, Rui Hachimura guarding against Nikola Jokic, is that something that might be a little bit of a trend throughout the series? And what we have seen is that Nikola Jokic, the role that he is on right now is pretty much unparalleled. I mean, 8 triple-doubles in the postseason, NBA record. He has been absolutely phenomenal, reminiscent of several great NBA Finals performances that we've seen in recent vintage. So, of course, if we're going to be talking about the biggest keys to a series win, you have to start with Nikola Jokic, you have to start with Jamal Murray, and the two-man game that they have been playing is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, we haven't seen this level of two-man play as far as like big and little since probably Stockton Malone.
Shaq and Kobe. I know Shaq, a little different style.
A bit different style, yeah, like a bit different style because these guys operate with the screen and roll so well. And the key is that
maybe LeBron and Davis from a few years ago when they were both like in their prime when they won the championship.
Maybe. Yeah, that could work. I mean, they're so similar in size, though. The point where I'm going with the Stockton Malone thing is that the reason that was so effective is because you typically think of the big man setting the screen and then rolling or popping. But both Jamal Murray and John Stockton were really good screeners. I mean, Stockton would also jab his knee in your groin and tug on your shorts a little bit as you're going around the screen. He was a little bit dirty. Haven't seen Murray doing that quite as much. But the fact that Murray is a capable and willing screener, that opens up Jokic for a lot of stuff as well. So the two stars are, of course, the biggest reason. But I also want to shout out the role players on this one. I'm going to kind of rattle off some stats here. If we're talking about the regular rotation that Denver plays, and they keep it kind of short, where you've got the two stars, you've got Michael Porter Jr., Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Aaron Gordon, Bruce Brown, and then you occasionally get Jeff Green, Christian Braun in there.
They're 7-8 deep.
None of their rotation guys shot below 40% from the field. And of their rotation guys, only Aaron Gordon was below 36% shooting from three. And he's not really a three-point shooter. That's not his game. But everybody else was shooting really well from the field, really well from three, regardless if it was at home or on the road. So, of course, the two big stars are the reason they won the series, but the role players played to their role to a T, which is why I think it was a sweep. That's the difference. The role player stepping up made it a sweep. The stars made it a series win for Denver.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was actually a much closer series than you would think, it being 4-0. There was, a 5-point game, a 6-point game, a 2-point game, and the one double-digit win was a 1-point game in the fourth quarter. So all these games were close. Even like the first game, the 6-point win Lakers were down, like 3 with a minute to go, so free throws made the difference. This was a very tight series, and obviously Nikola Jokic was the best player in the series by far. His numbers were incredible, 27.8 points per game, 14.5 rebounds, 11.8 assists. But in all honesty, Tom, those numbers, they're up compared to his regular season averages, but not so significantly up. I mean, he almost averaged a triple-double in the regular season. Jokic doing this at this point should not be a surprise. The biggest reason they got the sweep was actually Jamal Murray, because I know he had some injuries, a little bit of a down year this year, but Jamal Murray was averaging about 20 points per game this season. And you look at his career averages, I mean, maybe outside of that bubble Utah series, he's never really touched, 30-plus points. He can do it. We just saw him do it, but he was well above his averages, 32.5 points per game in this series, 6.3 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 2.8 steals, 50, 40, 90 from the field. Super clutch in the fourth quarters, incredible in the second halves. Anytime they needed a big shot, Jamal Murray delivered. So he's really the difference why this was such a clean series. Because what do you say, Tom? I mean, it is in some ways it's a coming out party, but we've kind of known he's been a good player for a while, but he's not this good. I mean, maybe he will be. Maybe he's taking the next step, but we've never seen him consistently play this good in a series this big. I mean, I know bubble, Jazz, Donovan Mitchell, and him went back and forth. Neither guy necessarily great at defense, although Jamal Murray did make the defensive play on LeBron as well. So I think the Nuggets as a team have improved greatly defensively the last couple of years, which has been a big difference as to why they're ascending to that next step. But Jamal Murray definitely played better than he's played. I mean, if you had his regular season averages and you put him up there in this series, he'd be 3-1 Lakers right now. So he's been the biggest difference maker in the series. He hasn't been the best player. It's been Jokic. But my thought is this is not surprising from Jokic. If you are the least bit surprised from Jokic, you have not been paying attention to what this man is doing. He is the best player in the game at the moment. He's actually very much like LeBron James. I mean, they're very similar players. You take LeBron James, prime LeBron James, which, again, LeBron is much closer to his prime than people realize. He's not the reason the Lakers lost the series. I mean, he led him in scoring, assists. He was 28 points, almost 10 rebounds, close to 10 assists. LeBron's not the reason the Lakers lost the game. I mean, he is slightly past his prime, a little bit past his prime, but he is still capable of being the best player on the best team in the world if he has enough supporting cast around him, which obviously D'Angelo Russell was terrible. Dennis Schroeder, terrible. They both shot in the 30% from the field, from the three. They gave the Lakers nothing. I mean, I know both teams play 7-8-man rotations, but the Lakers were basically playing with 4 players the entire series. It was LeBron, Davis, who again was up and down. Then they had Hachimura and Austin Reeves played good. But Schroeder, Russell gave him nothing. Lonnie Walker really gave him nothing, even though he was great against the Warriors in that one game. But you said it, the Nuggets role players played good. The Lakers didn't. And you look at the best player on the Nuggets is Jokic. He outplayed the best player on the Lakers, LeBron. Davis, the second best player on the Lakers, he got outplayed by Jamal Murray, which is, again, a little bit surprising. At this stage of his career, Jokic outplaying LeBron, not necessarily a surprise, but Jamal Murray playing so much better than Davis. And maybe it shouldn't be a surprise given how up and down Davis has been. But there is something to be said about Anthony Davis. 2-3 years ago, we were waiting for him to become the guy in the league, maybe a top 2 or 3 player in the league. We were arguing, is he the best player in the league? Is he going to be the best player? Is he going to be better than Giannis? And right now, Davis is, at best, Tom, the 4th best big man in the league. Forget the best player in the game. He might not be a top 10 player in the world at the moment, Anthony Davis. I mean, you look at Jokic, clearly better. You look at Embiid, clearly better. You look at Giannis, clearly better than Davis. So that's some names to look at. But Jamal Murray, to me, was the X factor in this series. He's the guy that played, what is it you like to say, regression to the mean? He's the guy that played higher above his level than anyone else in the series.
Yeah, and to your point about Jamal Murray, it's one of those things where postseason's just a little bit different in the NBA, where you have guys play a little bit above what their normal
Yeah,
watermark is. I mean, think
makes
about
sense.
the Toronto Raptors, Kawhi Leonard. All you need is one star player to go supernova for just for a handful of games, 20 games to however many you end up playing throughout the postseason, and you can absolutely find yourself not only in the NBA Finals but potentially winning an NBA Finals, and that certainly is the path that the Denver Nuggets seem destined to, especially given how the Eastern Conference doesn't really seem like they have an optimal challenger there. So before we get to that, I mean, Nikola Jokic is on this historical run that we've talked
Yeah,
about,
let's
as
talk
far as
about it more.
eight triple doubles and everything along those lines so far in the playoffs. So we're gonna have I'm gonna put a little bit of a caveat on here, assuming that the Nuggets go ahead and win the NBA Finals.
Sure.
Where does this performance rank? Because whether they win or not, it is an all time. It is a great performance all time. But in order for it to be listed up there with Giannis, to be listed up there with LeBron James on pick any number of NBA Finals that he has won. I mean, what are some of the other ones that we're thinking about? Like maybe Kawhi Leonard and the Toronto Raptors. You got a couple lucky bounces, but we're able to get it.
Dirk.
There are a lot of great performances. Dirk Nowitzki's a great one. So as he's going right now, as Nikola Jokic is going right now, where does this stack over some of the performances that we've seen this century over the past 20, 25 years in terms of all-time finals or playoff great performances?
Yeah, I'm kind of keeping it more to the 2025 years. I mean, kind
Mm-hmm.
of like Jordan's kind of disqualified because I want to keep it to
It's a
series
little
we
bit of a different
watched
era,
live.
yeah.
I mean, I did watch Michael Jordan on YouTube, his past playoff performances. You can take honestly, LeBron and Jordan, you could take about 3 or 4 years and stack them against anyone's best ever because those guys have been unbelievable in the playoffs their entire careers. But for me, this is right up there with the best of them. I mean, this could easily be a trivia question, but I'm going to go ahead and put it out here for the sake of this argument because
Mm-hmm.
in the history of the playoffs, there has been 2 guys, Tom Casselman, that have played more than one series. So there's a couple others who did it in a short, brief series, but at least 10 playoff games to average a triple-double in the history of the NBA. One of them at the moment is Nikola Jokic, and barring something crazy, he will finish averaging a triple-double throughout the playoffs. The other guy was Jason Kidd. But the big difference there is Jason Kidd's averages were about 15, 11, and 11. Jokic about 30, 13, and 10. So pretty similar rebound assist outputs, a little bit higher for Jokic on rebounds, just a little bit higher for J Kidd on assists. But Jokic is averaging roughly double the points Jason Kidd did in his triple-double run. So that's very impressive. I mean, for me, even though he didn't win the finals, obviously I think of that LeBron team. I think it was 07 against the
San Antonio,
Pistons,
yeah.
where they got swept against San Antonio. I know we had a tough finals performance, but him carrying the torch against the Pistons was iconic. And actually the next year, Tom, LeBron in 08-09 playoffs averaged 35 points per game in those playoffs, 9 rebounds, 7 assists on better than 50% shooting. I think an underrated run was Steph Curry last year. Steph Curry in the finals was unbelievable. Obviously, Dirk taking out the Heatles is up there. Giannis, in his finals run, the 50 points in the clinching game. By the way, coming off an injury that series, definitely a very memorable one. I mean, you can kind of go back to Shaq in the early 2000s.
Sure.
When he was the NBA Finals MVP all 3 years. He was putting up 30, 20 games in the playoffs, the finals. So it's right up there with all of those. It's very hard to pick one, but I might have to lean Jokic because we haven't seen this before. And again, he's shooting a high percentage. He's not turning the ball over a crazy amount of times. And I was just saying it in the earlier segment, Jokic and LeBron are very much the same player. Jokic is obviously just a little bit slower, but he's also bigger and maybe even a slightly better outside shooter than LeBron as well. But they are very similar players. And if you watch the post-game conference, LeBron's like, I love the way this guy plays. He gets his teammates involved. He's always making the right decision. And he's like, there's not that many guys out there. Like, I'm one of them. I respect the Joker. And like, I think a lot of media members are looking to like bait LeBron into saying like, oh, this guy is better than I thought. But LeBron was like, no, I knew this was going to happen. I mean, that 1 foot backwards three that he shot like over his head. And he did that a couple of times in the series, by the way. But that one was actually pretty much the clinching play in game 4. That's unbelievable. And it should have been #1 on SportsCenter. It's way cooler than a diving catch. It's way cooler than anything out there. I mean, Jokic is the only guy who can maybe do that consistently in the NBA. So this is right up there with them. I mean, last week, Tom, I had a statement of the week saying when he's done, Jokic will be a top 10 player all time. I think especially if he wins the ring, all these guys on ESPN, they're going to have to admit that he's the best player in the game. It's weird because, these are cream of the crop athletes. And I think a lot of these guys are resistant to say that this bigger, slower guy is the best player in the game. And they're resistant to it. I mean, no one wants to say it. And again, we've said that the best player and the second, third, fourth best player, it's not a huge gap. Jokic isn't way better than a lot of these other guys in the league, but for the sake of argument, we got to pick one best player, and he is the best player in the game. And I think we're going to have to admit it. I mean, the country as a whole, the media as a whole, the former players who are much more athletic than Jokic, the current players much more athletic than Jokic. The time has come. He's the best player in the game today, and he is literally, of the last 20 years, maybe if not all time, having one of, if not the best, iconic playoff run, Nikola Jokic. I mean, all the credit goes to him. You really cannot stop him. That's the issue. He's so tall. He's so big. And like, if you double team him, he will find his guys and they'll score. If you go one-on-one against them, you won't stop him in the post. And if you have a hand in his face, I mean, Davis, LeBron, these are huge guys, really good defenders. He will score anyway, Tom. No stopping Jokic. There's literally no answer for him. None.
Well, there is definitely going to be an answer to this next question. Will this be LeBron James's last season, as he kind of contemplated a little bit in some post-game comments? Does he actually have to think about whether or not he's coming back to play next year, or is this just kind of a case of, depending on how you want to skew it, if it's just like, hey, tired, just kind of, spouting off in the moment, just kind of thinking aloud type of thing? Or is there actually potentially a decision to be made for LeBron James and what he wants to do?
Look, we're not inside LeBron's head. There's no way to know for sure. But my gut feeling says not a chance. I mean, LeBron's under contract. He's going to give up millions of dollars to retire. I know he's expressed his whole want to play with his son. I know that, that may or may not happen. He said if his son doesn't want to play with him, he doesn't care that much about it. But he's going to come back and play. I don't see LeBron wanting to end his career. And again, it wasn't his fault that got swept. Like, you look at what the numbers, LeBron, 28 points, 10 assists, 9.5 rebounds. He's still a top 10 player in the league for me. He is, not far off Jokic. I mean, Jokic is the better player, but like in spurts, LeBron was the best player on the court in certain spurts with the back-to-back reigning MVP. He was incredible in game 4. I think he simply ran out of gas. I mean, he's 38 years old. That's the difference between him and maybe the very prime of his career. He could do this a lot, but if he does have to score 30-something points, then maybe in the second half, he's a little bit tired. So, I mean, as you get older, consistency is the thing. So obviously for me, I think that he was just drained. It was an emotional game. It was a tough loss. I think he felt like they were going to win the game. I mean, they're up 15. What was it at the half? Something like that. I don't know the exact score, but they were up at the half. He's rolling. A lot of credit goes to the Nuggets for not laying down. So I think LeBron, for me, is going to come back. I think that this is definitely going to be a case that when he sits down and thinks about it, he'll come back. He's a competitor. He has too much to give to this game. And if you get the right pieces around him, Tom, he could be a champion again. He really could be a champion. You got to get the right pieces, obviously. Lakers had some, not enough. But I'm not buying this for a second that LeBron has done. I did see one interesting thing online. If you're going to be one of those people that does say he's done, that he's going to take an year off, watch his son play at USC, and then come back the year after he's rested his body a little bit. That was the interesting thing I saw online, but I don't think so. I mean, LeBron knows legacy. He knows, and it's very hard, by the way, at 39 to like come back. And that's what Jordan did. Jordan retired for a couple years, and then he was at that age, and obviously he was still very good because it's Michael Jordan. You know, made the All-Star game, put up over 20 points per game. But Wizards Jordan was not a top 10 player in the game, even in that time. So I don't think LeBron could afford to take a year off. He's either done or he's not. And my gut is that he's not.
Yeah, I would lean that way as well. And sure, if you want to think about the whole take a gap year and come back type of thing, I mean, you're welcome to think that, but doesn't the NBA kind of allow for like in-season gaps anyway? I mean, load management is and has been a thing ever since, Greg Popovich and that aging trio of Spurs with Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili. The whole reason load management became a thing was because those guys were in their mid to late 30s and, were kind of managing getting dinged up during the season to having some finals, having some success in the playoffs and actually beating LeBron and the Miami Heat in that fourth finals run, I think it was, that the Heat had, because they lost, they beat the Thunder, or they lost to the Mavericks, beat the Thunder, beat the Spurs, lost to the Spurs. And the reason that the Spurs were able to be in those games, despite being a significantly older team, was load management. I think absolutely LeBron James that was a big part of, like, they weren't pushing as hard through the season is what I'm saying. And you can do that with LeBron James. And it would actually be more warranted, I think, than, say, a lot of the other younger stars who are in the game.
That's counterproductive to what he said in his post-game conference, actually. He said that he was upset at how many games he missed this year, that he wants to be available for his teammates.
Well, sure. No, like, you can be available, but what I'm saying is that as far as the load management goes, like, he played 42 something minutes during the Western Conference Finals.
He played 48 in the last game. I think he missed like a few seconds only.
Yeah, like at the end of that first half. I think that part of the load management for LeBron James, and this is where I'm going to kind of like semantics argue your point a little bit. I don't think for LeBron James it's about finding the pieces to fit around him. I think now he's at the point of the career where he has to be the fit for somebody else. And we're seeing Anthony Davis was supposed to be the guy to take over and be the 1A option with LeBron as the 1B. And then hope you either have like a third star or good role players in there. The Lakers, and I'm assuming that he's going to be returning to the Lakers as far as playing next year. They need to find more better complementary pieces around LeBron James. I mean, why are the Nuggets so good with Jokic and Murray? It's because for the most part, outside of Aaron Gordon, all of their role players are decent to good three-point shooters, particularly on the catch and shoot. We saw what happened when LeBron James, I think he shot below 30% from three. Like, that's not a strength in his game. And if it's not going to be, you need to have that be the strength of just about everybody else on the roster, which wasn't a strong suit for the Lakers this year. So I think that, they need to find the pieces to fit around him, but I think they need maybe a different star, because I just don't think it's sustainable for LeBron James. As great as he is, he can't be at that peak greatness the same way he was 10 years ago in his true athletic prime. He's really, really talented, really, really smart, and knows the game, but we're seeing that he gets tired, and we're seeing it, I think it was the end of game 2, where he was just chucking up three-point shots as opposed to going to the rim because his legs were done. I mean, that's what happens when you play that many minutes in the postseason. In order for LeBron James to win another championship, he cannot be the focal point on a team and carry the team throughout the entire postseason. Once upon a time, he could do that, and he was the best in the league at doing so. I think those days are done. So there has to be an adjustment on his part. There has to be adjustment on the Lakers' part if they're going to have that success, if LeBron is going to potentially reach a 5th title. I just don't know if that's going to be in the cards over the next couple seasons.
A few things just to kind of counter and go off. First off, on load management, there's a way to do load management right, because I think a lot of times when you miss too many games, you get hurt because you're not used to playing. So I don't like load management. I don't think it works unless you manage the minutes. That's the way to load manage. And that is, by the way, what the Warriors have done with Steph Curry and what the Bucks have done with Giannis. You look at the last 5-6 years of any superstars in the NBA, you look up the minutes, Tom, you'll see that Stephen Curry and Giannis Antetokounmpo play less minutes than any other superstars in the NBA. So, and then that's what the Bulls did with Michael Jordan later on in his career. He wasn't missing games, but you can miss minutes, more time and rest. So that's what I think really LeBron needs. I don't think that he needs to miss games because, again, that's hard on the body. I think a lot of these teams who load manage, they end up having more injuries anyway. So for me, it's just less minutes. Secondly, I mean, look, sure, obviously LeBron's a capable passer. He wants to pass. If they can get him a mega star, I get what you're saying. I kind of agree, maybe. But I do think if the team is really good, LeBron could be the number one scoring option on our championship team. But I think I agree that it has to be 1A, 1B. I mean, I don't think he can carry the team the way he used to with the Cavaliers. That much I agree with. But I do think that he could be the best player on a championship winning team. Because I'll be honest with you, Tom, right now, for next season, I know you're not going to agree with this. I know a lot of people won't agree with this. But LeBron, what I know LeBron has is consistency. He has a way to impact the game, even if he's having a bad three-point shooting game. Because he can simply get rebounds, get assists, be a leader on the court. He actually runs the offense, runs the defense. He's a more consistent player that even if a shot isn't falling, he can impact the game. I would rather personally, Tom, for next season, in a playoff scenario, playoff setting, I would take LeBron James over Jason Tatum, for example. I know you're going to disagree, but Jason Tatum, for me, isn't a guy that has that it factor. So I agree LeBron can't win a championship where he carries everybody, but they were actually not far off winning a championship with this current roster. I mean, to be honest with you, right now, the Lakers, I think, are the second best team in the NBA, and they happen to play the best team in the NBA in the Western Conference Finals. I think that LeBron and Davis, I don't know if you, again, I watched LeBron's post-game conference. He said that since he's been teammates with Davis, this is easily the best team they've played. He said this Nuggets team is as constructed as the best overall team they've played. I think that if they were playing anyone else but the Nuggets, they would win the finals. Again, that's my take. They were actually not that far away in this series. There were so many close games. I mean, really, to be honest with you, if D'Angelo Russell did what he normally does, they probably could have made this a series. So I agree to the extent that LeBron isn't going to be able to do what he did with the Cavs to carry a team. But I do think if there's great enough pieces around him, he could still win the championship as the leading scorer. Because, I mean, that's what he did with Davis a couple years ago. But I do agree it's got to be a 1A, 1B, where it's whether he's 1A or 1B. And then it's different, too. I mean, who's the best player? Like, you could average 1 or 2 points less than the leading scorer and still be the best player. Because, I mean, I don't know that, Jokic is going to go to the Lakers. That's not going to happen. I don't know that, Curry's going to leave the Warriors. Giannis is going to go to the Lakers. I mean, I don't see a superstar going to the Lakers where he would be a better player. Like, who would go there? Like, who would you pair him with? I don't see, like, that type of player out there.
I mean, it would just have to be that Anthony Davis has to take it up to a level that we haven't seen before. He has to go to, like, 2003 Tim Duncan's level where it's 25, 15, and 5 assists type of thing with 3 blocks. Like, that's the type of performance that he needs. But the problem with Davis and LeBron is that they're too good at the same thing. They get their points the same way, which is in the post going to the basket.
Well, the problem is neither one went to the basket enough this series.
And I mean, you say tired legs.
You say LeBron's tired. That's part of it. But Davis and LeBron both shot too many jump shots, too many threes. And that's it, Davis. But I actually listened to one of the guys. I don't remember who it is, to be honest, Tom. But they were talking about Anthony Davis. It might have been actually Kenny, I think. Kenny Smith maybe was talking about it. I think it was one of the inside guys. Anthony Davis, if you look at what Anthony Davis did in college, and if you look at, like, yes, he put up crazy numbers on the Pelicans because he had to, But Anthony Davis's biggest strength as a player is rebounding and defense and kind of doing a little bit of everything. I don't know if Anthony Davis is that guy that could score 30 points consistently. I mean, he's played in this league long enough. He did it in brief spurts with the Pelicans, but consistently, I don't think that's him.
That's why I don't think that the LeBron and the Lakers, this was their best shot at winning a title. I don't think that they're going to get back there.
I don't think they'll win the championship, but I wouldn't be shocked because I think right now we're kind of at an interesting point in the NBA. If you look at the NBA as it's constructed right now, Tom, there really isn't a single great team. We have a lot of really good teams.
I mean,
the Nuggets are the one, but
the Nuggets have everybody under contract next year, so they'll
and then
they'll be right
LeBron's
back.
window was closing. I agree with that, but I still don't think that this is an all-time great team. And again, they were close all these games, so I agree with you. He shouldn't probably win a championship again, but I mean, you know how Kawhi Leonard won a championship, even how Giannis won a championship. A lot of these teams are one injury away. The Lakers are easily capable of making it to the second round of the playoffs, if not the Western Conference Finals. So, I mean, they play someone gets hurt. I wouldn't say it's out of this world that they would win a championship, but I would say, yes, realistically, they probably won't win a title again.
Yeah, well, we're going to see how that's going to shake out in the offseason heading into next year. But of course, it's not all about the Nuggets and the Lakers. We do have a game is, perhaps getting a little bit compelling now. We have a little bit more TNT coverage of the NBA. So we get Shaq and Ernie and Kenny and Chuck again as the Celtics with a double-digit win over the Miami Heat in Miami to push this, to stave off the sweep, to push this back to Boston. So first off, we'll start off with, the Heat. They're up 3-1 in the series, and despite, ESPN's analytics team loving Boston so much that they still have, I think it's like a 33 or so % chance of winning this series, despite being down now 3-1. How are the Heat leading the series so far?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, first off, Boston is another reason why I don't love Boston for me as an NBA champion team. Again, I think that they've been a product of having things go right for them the last couple of years, but Boston is a classic live by the three, die by the three team. They're overall a good three-point shooting team, but they're not like all-time great three-point shooters. I know the Warriors in some ways are the same way, but they have the best shooter ever in Steph Curry, one of the best shooters ever in Klay Thompson. And again, a very underrated part of Steph Curry's game, why I think he's one of the most underrated players of all time. He's really good at getting to the basket. He's a smaller guy. He's not going to dunk. He's not super athletic. But Steph Curry has the ability to drive for two when he's cold. I don't think Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum are as good at finishing near the rim. I think that the reason why they're down 3-1 is they've shot under 40% from three of the 4 games, under 30% 2 of the games this series. Boston is 37-2 this season, I think I saw, when they shoot 40% or better from 3. So, I mean, that's the biggest reason. Their offense is so reliant on the 3. They don't have a guy who can go in and get an easy basket. If the threes aren't falling, they're in trouble. But, I mean, Jaylen Brown, I think Jason Tatum's fourth quarter struggles are a big part of it. The first 3 games, no points in the fourth quarter. But other than that, he's actually been decent this series. Jaylen Brown's been a bigger problem. He's shooting 39% from the field and 12% on threes. And he's only 4 of 9 from the free throw line, which is, again, very discouraging because this is what I'm talking about. Live by the 3, die by the 3. You got to get to the basket sometimes and get either finish with points or finish with free throws. And Jaylen Brown is not only not getting to the basket, but he's not even making his free throws. So that's a legitimate concern. But Boston issues aside, I mean, it's as much as Eric Spoelstra doesn't want to talk about it, it's these undrafted Heat players. And again, Tom, how long can they keep this up? I don't know. Because the regression to the mean, these guys are playing way better than they're going to be playing the rest of their careers, honestly. I mean, Caleb Martin right now, Tom, 18.5 points per game, shooting 64% from the field, 46% on threes. Gabe Vincent, 17.5 points per game, shooting 58% from the field, 50% from three. Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, also shooting the ball really well. So literally all of Miami's role players are playing better than they should be. And Boston's secondary star, the role players, not playing as good as they should be. So I think a lot of it has to do with the coaching too, though, honestly.
I mean, that's
Eric,
where I'm coming in.
Eric Spoelstra, I'll let you get in here in a second, but my quick take on it, Eric Spoelstra obviously is a much better coach than Joe Mazzulla. Even the Boston players have said this, which sometimes this could work, but I don't think it works as much in the playoffs. Boston kind of just plays. They don't really have set plays. They don't really have like a way to get a basket, like which again, if the team is great enough, like, you know, the Warriors can kind of do that, perhaps, you know, rely on ball movement, but the Warriors have a lot of screens. They do have set plays. I mean, Kerr does draw stuff up. You got to be an all-time great team to not really run set plays. And this is not an all-time great Boston team. So, again, maybe I'm a little harsh, but Joe Mazzulla, I looked up his resume, Tom. His only head coaching job prior to this was at a Division II college basketball school where he got into the NCAA Division II first round. So he literally has no success. He got the job because he was an assistant on the current Boston staff.
Second row Joe.
Yeah, so maybe
that's what they call them.
Maybe their thought is that, look, he's been here. He knows the system. The players like him. You know, he won't get in their way, but sometimes a coach has to get in their way. And the fact that we talk about Jason Tatum, Tom, no points the first 3 games of the fourth quarter. And look, the third game, they were down big. I get it. He didn't play that much in the fourth. But either way, the first 3 games, he had 3 shots in the fourth quarter. I think game 1 did not have a single shot.
Not a single one, yes.
And that's leadership.
Where coaching comes in.
This is coaching. This is on Tatum. This is on Marcus Smart. They don't have the leadership and the coaching. They're equally to blame. Tatum's got to say, give me the ball. Mazzulla's got to say, give him the ball. That's definitely been a big problem in this series for Boston. Definitely getting outcoached by a lot. And honestly, game 1 and game 2, Tom, they were pretty close games. If you swapped Spoelstra and Mazzulla, the Celtics are probably up 2-0 instead of down 2-0.
Yeah, and this is something where, you know, obviously Ime Udoka and the scandal that they had in the offseason leading into the beginning of this season. And from everything that I've heard, they've done a good job of keeping the particulars under wraps. But from everything that I've seen reported, they absolutely had to make the move. They absolutely had to move on from Ime Udoka and the culture that he had kind of fomented out in Boston. But to go to Joe Mazzulla, the reason that he has a nickname among some, it's a bit disparaging, second row Joe, is that because if you look at the Celtics bench last year, he's not even the first row of coaches. He's in the second row with the rest of the coaches. So he's not even one of the top assistants, top lieutenants. And I'm trying to think, I'm blanking on the name. I want to say the last name's Hardy. He's an assistant coach out in LA who was an assistant coach under Brad Stevens, who's now the president of basketball operations.
Bring him
in
back
Boston.
to coach.
They could have.
They should have done it at least for 1 year in a gap year.
There's nothing that the Clippers could have done. And that's a coach that knows the players, knows the system. So the whole, okay, we're just going to promote Joe Mazzulla despite the fact that he doesn't have all this experience. It really feels like to this point, Boston has been succeeding in spite of its head coach, which is not a good place to be in the NBA because we are seeing just how big of a difference that can be. The whole offensive system, it's meant to be a passing free flow type of offense. You need to draw up set plays for Jason Tatum and give him the agency to get stuff going to the basket. Like you said, whenever the Warriors are a little bit cold, they draw something up where Steph goes to the basket, where you get Clay on some sort of motion that the coach makes an adjustment, says, okay, we're going to get these guys going and change things up a little bit. And if you even want to look at, I think it was game 3, the Celtics did a good job of getting the game close once they started double teaming Jimmy Butler toward the end of the first half. At the start of the second half in the third quarter, they went back to single covering him. And it's what kind of adjustments are you making that you're going back to something that wasn't working and then the Heat blow your doors off? So for me, it does come down to poor execution. I mean, Jaylen Brown shooting, 3 of 25 from 3?
12%. 4
absolutely
of 9
not
on
going to
free
cut
throws
it.
too.
But you need a strong head coach to look at guys like Marcus Smart and say, your job is to not commit an offensive foul. Your job is to not turn the ball over. Your job is to let the big dogs eat. And your big dog right now is Jason Tatum, who, I mean, yeah, he's shooting 31% from three, but he's doing everything else seemingly pretty well. I mean, averaging almost 28 points, 10 rebounds, 4.5 assists. He's doing his part. In fact, he could be doing more, and I think that they need to design more stuff for him. So that's why the Heat are doing as well. They are executing their game plan to perfection. They're actually making in-game and pre-game adjustments. Eric Spoelstra is drawing up good stuff, and then his guys are going out and executing. So that's why the series is 3-1 at this point. That's why a lot of folks thought, hey, are we going to have a couple of sweeps in the conference finals, which now that I'm thinking about it, and I'm saying a lot, I don't even know the last time that may have happened where you have both conference finals, ostensibly the two best teams in each conference, and they both end in sweeps. But certainly, we've talked about how the Heat are leading 3-1. What's been going on with Tatum in the fourth quarter of this series, and that kind of leads us into, does Boston have a chance that we've never seen across any sport or any of the major four sports, a team go down
The Red
0-3 and come back
Sox
and win?
did it, but not in basketball.
That's right. Okay, so in
Never
basketball
happened
we
in
haven't.
basketball.
I think it's actually, now I'm saying it, I think it may have happened in hockey as well, where you're
I'm not
down
sure, but it's
0-3 and you
never
come back
happened
and
in
win.
basketball. That I know for sure is a stat because I saw it
Yeah,
on SportsCenter this morning. So it never
yeah,
happened in basketball.
and to talk about Sports Center and ESPN's analytics loves the Boston Celtics. A lot of people love the Boston Celtics, as you mentioned. There's a large line. This number that you put in, Kamen, of a 33% chance, is that what ESPN says is Boston's chance of winning this
Oh, it's
series?
probably higher. It was actually 31 when they were down 3-0. That's what ESPN was saying when they're down 3-0. It's probably
It sounds
closer
like
to 40 now.
you need to fix your statistical
I know.
model if that's what you're arriving to. But let's go ahead and say, okay, a 33% chance that we see history here, that
Sure.
Boston comes back and wins the series.
I say there's about a 5% chance because anything is
That sounds
possible.
right.
They have the better roster on paper, but I think this is not going to happen. I mean, this is just kind of crazy that you would think they would do this. I mean, it would have to be like an all-time great team, which, again, I don't think this Boston Celtics team is. They're also a live by the three, die by the three team. I don't think they're going to shoot lights out 4 games in a row. And I think a lot of it, like coming down from 3-0, even 3-1, a lot of times it's like speaks to the discipline of the other team. The Heat are well led. They have Eric Spoelstra, one of the best coaches, if not the best coach in the NBA at the moment. Jimmy Butler, one of the biggest leaders, a guy that will not let his team, not give it their all. I think Miami's very motivated. I think the Heat are going to take this. I really do. They're completely in sync. I don't know if you've seen that video of them shaking hands, like in sync.
No.
Oh gosh, yeah. It was after one of the games this series, maybe game 1 or game. I don't know what game it was, but Jimmy Butler shook someone's hands, and the two teammates behind there shook hands at the exact same time, and it was like a video showing how in sync Miami is right now. So a lot to be said about playing your best ball at the right time. And a lot of it was due to injuries earlier this season. Miami struggled this year. They had the 4th most injuries, but they've kind of come into their own. This Miami Heat team, let's not forget they were the 1 seed last year. It's easy for us to say that Boston has the better roster, and they do, but I don't think it's by as much as we think. I mean, because, what's the saying in basketball? You play both ends of the floor. Miami has a better defensive team. They have, look, part of it is hustle, but there is something to be said about defensive talent. Bam Adebayo is a beast near the rim. Jimmy Butler is a two-way player that we know him to be. So there is something to be said about defensive talent, which we never talk about in basketball. So I don't think Boston is that much more talented. I don't think they're that much better to win 4 in a row. I think the Miami win this series. And keep this in mind, Charles Barkley guaranteed an easy win for Boston in Game 5. And we know Charles Barkley as awesome as he is, as entertaining as he is notorious for arguably being the worst guy in probably ever at picking sports games. I mean, this man puts a curse on you. He at halftime of game 4, he said when the Heat were up 6 or whatever, he said the series is over. And then essentially 90 minutes later, he said that Boston's cruising in game 5. Complete 360 from Chuck. So hashtag fade Chuck. I really think game 5 is 50-50. Boston has been so bad in its home arena. You know, I'm all over the Heat +8 on that betting spread. Game 5 is 50-50. If Boston win that game, then I would have to pick Miami in game 6. So could go either way, Miami in 5, Miami in 6. Now, if it does get to 7, that's where it gets really interesting. But I'm banking on it not getting to 7. I did pick Boston in 7 before the series started, and I regretted it because in my head, like after we got off the air, I was like, man, I don't know. I should have just picked Miami because I wasn't that confident. I wanted Miami to win. I immediately regretted it, Tom Casselman. Then I watched game 1, and I was like, I regret this. Miami's going to win this series. So I'll stick with the Heat in 5 or 6 here, either option.
Yeah, I think that I'll go like a little bit higher. I'll say like a 10, maybe 12% chance that Boston ends up pulling this out because, like, Miami is just so good with what they have. But you look at that, you know, regression to the mean. I understand that regression to the mean does not take into account the variance of sample size to a certain extent. Like we're looking at guys like Caleb Martin, like Gabe Vincent, who are, you know, shooting less, who are shooting way better than they have this entire season, who are averaging more points per game than they have this entire season. And does that come crashing down at all in this particular conference
Maybe
series?
in the finals, Tom. Well,
It could be in
they
the
have
finals.
extra time off, and then they cool off a little bit. One real quick point too, Tom. Jimmy Butler, the last 2 games, has not been that great. So even if those guys regress the mean a little bit, Jimmy Butler, I think, is going to have a huge game in game 5, game 6, because he's been very not great the last 2 games. We've actually kind of like forgotten this playoff Jimmy. I mean, we haven't forgotten it, but like the playoff Jimmy Butler narrative, the last couple of games has not been there. So he's due for a big game too. Even if those guys regress a little bit, he's up for. I mean, and you talked about playoffs. Some guys are more comfortable in the playoffs. You know, even Jamal Murray, the Nuggets are up so much these games in the regular season, doesn't feel the need to score, doesn't feel the need to shoot. Some of these players are rhythm players. The more shots you take, the better you play. But don't forget about Jimmy Butler, Tom. He may have a Jimmy Butler game because he hasn't had it the last couple of games.
Yeah, I think we get back to Miami. I think this goes to game 6 in part because in kind of talking about the inconsistency of the Boston Celtics this postseason. I mean, they were up, you know, 3-0 on the Atlanta Hawks, and then just kind of like piddled around and let it get to a 6-game series type of thing. They didn't really take it seriously until they had to, and it feels kind of like a similar thing happened with the 76ers series. You know, where they're down 3-2, and then they go and they dominate in game 7. They get the big win in game 6. I mean,
they did it last year against Milwaukee too. They were down 3-2 in that series.
And we kind of expected, hey, you guys are down. Like, hey, game 2 is a big game. I mean, there's some statistic. We're heading into game 2 of the Heat and Celtics series that for home favorites that lost game 1, they were like 22-1 in game 2, and they were like 22-2 against the spread type of thing. Like basically saying that if the home team loses game 1, they absolutely wipe you out in game 2, and that didn't happen. I think that took a lot of people by surprise because it's like, well, that feels like a game that the Celtics need to have. And then, of course, in game 3, getting that first one on the road, that feels like one that the Celtics should need to have. They literally needed to have game 4, and they got it. I wonder if they're just a team that
are better with their backs against their wall.
Maybe,
you know, maybe they have that focus a little bit better. Maybe the problem is, I think Miami's very focused. Though.
Yeah, so I'm saying that I think the Celtics will play well enough to get this one back to Miami. I don't know if it goes to a game seven. I think that'd be tremendous theater if it does, because you're going to have a lot of eyeballs on that series. The downside, of course, is that you've just got Denver hanging out doing nothing for a week and a half, which less than optimal. Maybe they should have just folded it up against the Lakers and said, no, we need to make sure we get this extra game in so that we're not quite so rusty in the finals type of thing. But yeah, I'm saying there's a chance for Boston in this one, although I'm fairly certain Miami's going to close it out.
Fair.
Locks of the week, where you made up some good ground, Kamen. You had a great week in locks of the week. For me,
holy cow,
I took a couple of dart throws at golf and missed pretty poorly for both of those, but I enjoyed a little bit of a sweat on Jokic's prop to save me from an 0 for week.
The goose egg, yeah. Look, man, I bet a lot of sports. I usually do all right, but for whatever reason, I call it the Salute Your Sports curse. Whenever I pick on this show, not good. I was shocked that I was 3-0. I can't remember the last time I was 3-0 in a given week.
Minute.
Usually it's you that goes 3-0, 2-1 to keep us from the 0 for. This week we swap roles, Tom. I was the leader. You were the not so good one. It really feels like we swap roles. I was 3-0. D-backs -1.5 over the A's last Wednesday afternoon. My strategy for betting baseball this year, bet against the A's, worked out pretty good. It almost didn't, Tom. It was a weird game. They're up 3-0. The D-backs were in like the 7th inning. I was like, easy money. The A's tied at 3-3. The D-backs get 2 runs in the top of the 9th. They had like bases loaded, 2 outs, something like that, Tom. I was like, oh boy, here we go. I'm not going to get barbecued by this, but somehow, some way, D-backs won 5-3. I had Heat plus 8.5 at the Celtics in game 2. That worked out pretty good. Heat winning outright 123-116. And then this is one that I sweated out. Lakers plus 5.5 at the Nuggets in game 2. Nuggets winning 108-103. They won by 5, got it by half a point. I had just gotten off the air at work. I was streaming the game on the computer after work, and there was like 3-4 seconds and looked like the Nuggets were going to foul. D'Angelo Russell was going to foul a Nugget. I was like, oh no, don't foul D'Angelo. And he pulled away at the last second, or maybe he touched him and the ref just didn't call it. But thank goodness for the no foul call there. So you did get your Jokic under 53.5 points, assists, and rebounds. It's kind of crazy that Jokic had 23 points, 17 rebounds, and 12 assists. Really good game. It was actually lower than expected. That's how good this guy is. To be honest with you, that PRA, though, he must have hit it almost every game. This might have been one of the few that he didn't hit it.
Yeah.
So definitely lucky for you. It was 52 that he got, 53.5. Had he gotten one more basket, you would have won. I actually had a guy on Facebook. I guess he's a friend of mine, a guy that I used to work with one of the TV stations. Haven't talked to him in a while, but he had some like 14-leg parlay that would have won him like $4,000 on $5. And the only one he missed was Jokic's over on the game, the points over, which was 24.5. So had he gotten one more basket, one more field goal, he would have won all this money. So he got barbecued. You got unbarbecued there at the end. So
I would have taken the barbecue for that kind of juice. That's impressive.
Yeah, no kidding. The golf, I'll be honest with you, Tom. You do a pretty good job of picking picks. The last few times you've picked golf has been miserable.
I think I'm going to stay away from that.
Stay away from the golf, Tom. Stay away. You had Tony Finau to finish top 20 at the PGA Championship. He was one of the bottom guys, tied for 72nd. So that was not good. You had Jason Data outshoot Justin Thomas at the PGA Championship. That did not work out well. They missed the cut. Thomas made the cut. So 1-2 week for you, which is a little surprising. Usually you're on the winning side of things. 3-0 for me. I'm feeling good, man. Feeling good. I'm back in the winner's circle. What do you got this week, Tom?
All right. So I have let's see. I'll go with the Tampa Bay Rays coming off of a 20-1 defeat at the hands of the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm going to take Rays -1.5. You can get that at plus money, plus 110. Shane McClanahan, their ace, is on the mound today. And Yusei Kikuchi is a decent but kind of middling starter for the Blue Jays. So give me the Rays -1.5. They've been absolutely on a roll this season. For the A's and the Mariners, 8.5 runs seems kind of low, with the A's running out a guy who's got an ERA north of 6.8. So give me over 8.5 runs on the A's and the Mariners today. And then Orioles ahead of the Yankees in the standings. I will take them plus 0.5 runs in the first 5. So I'm anticipating them leading or being tied with the Yankees in the first 5 innings. Nestor Cortes going for the Bombers. He has an ERA over 5, whereas the Orioles starter is an ERA just above 2. So I think the Orioles will jump out to a good start. Not sure how the bullpen is going to go, but I'll take Orioles first 5 there.
Didn't go well last night. Aaron Judge got a home run, a tie in the 9th inning, and then the Yankees won an extra innings. So how about this, Tom? It's been a while since we've agreed on a pick. The exact same pick of all the games out there in the world we can pick. I'm notorious for picking soccer, hockey. We have the exact same pick, and I feel really good about it. I've also got actually, you almost stole the words out of my mouth. Like, literally, I have it written down the way you put it. I got Rays -1.5 over the Blue Jays at plus 110 tonight. I have written down Rays, the best record in baseball, lost 20-1 last night. Got all the bad plays out, coming back with the vengeance. Shane McClanahan, one of the best pitchers in baseball, 7-0 with the 2.05 ERA. Rays should win by 2 or more tonight, no problem. So look at that.
There we go.
We can both cheer for it. That's exciting. I'm going to go to some hockey, Tom. I know you're not Mr. Hockey, but we got to eventually talk the Stanley Cup, which we might do next week very briefly. I'm going to go some hockey here. Florida Panthers tonight, -115 against the Carolina Hurricanes tonight. Florida looking for a sweep of the series to make the Stanley Cup. Panthers are 10-1 in their last 11 games. They were down 3-1 against the Boston Bruins, the team with the best record in hockey history in the regular season. Came back to win that series in 7 games. Then they win 4 out of 5 against the Maple Leafs. They've won the first 3 this series. They've got the home ice. A little bit surprised it's only -115. I know we kind of have like -125 or -120. I don't know what we decided on the juice, but it is under that mark. I think they should be a heavier favorite. They have been cruising here in the playoffs. I expect a clean sweep, Florida Panthers over the Hurricanes. And then lastly, of course, I've been kind of teasing it the whole show. Heat +8 at the Celtics in Game 5. Series, by the way, the underdog in this series, Tom, has not only won every spread, they've also won every game outright. I'm not sure whether Miami's going to win outright or not. I'm totally 50-50 on the game. I'm not going to make a prediction on who's going to win, but Miami should cover +8. That's a very focused team, a well-coached team from Spoelstra, well-led team by Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Buckets has been quieter the last couple games. Look for a huge game for him. Boston, oddly, has really struggled at home. Like, it's kind of like home court disadvantage for them. I know it sounds weird to say, but you look at the playoffs the last couple of years, they've had some major issues defending home court. Had issues against the Sixers, lost the first 2 games against the Heat at home as well. Miami's going to keep this close. I think that Miami, like, we've seen a lot of these, like, we've never seen a 3-0 comeback, but we've seen a lot of these 3-1 upsets in recent years. I kind of look at what the Nuggets and the Heat did, Tom. They don't want to mess around. They really don't. I know we can have the age-old saying, like, should Miami reserve some effort and win it at home? I don't think we're going to see that at all. I think Miami's going to go for the win in Game 5, as they should, and it's going to be a close game. Probably going to go down to the last possession of the game or so. So I feel really good about the Heat covering 8 points. I mean, that's what I bet last week. I think it was 8.5, which is crazy because I think the Heat feel disrespected, Tom. ESPN analytics, whatever 30-something% chance for Boston to come back when down 3-0. I mean, Miami was a 1.5-point favorite at home. They were, a 3.5-point underdog at home.
Mhm.
And now they're an 8.5-point underdog on the road where they won the first 2 games. They're up 3-1 in this series. I mean, I get it. I get why Boston might be a slight favorite, but 8 points? 8 points. What are we doing here? What are we doing, Tom? Just does not make any sense. Give me the Heat to cover +8 tomorrow night in Game 5 of the NBA Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, well, that absolutely segues perfectly into trivia for this week, where I'll get it kicked off because in the NBA, only 3 teams have been down 0-3 and have forced a Game 7. Can you name those teams, Kamen?
Okay, down 0-3 and forced the game. It was just so funny because I just heard this stat on. I think I was listening to Sports Center on my drive back, but I think I didn't hear them say the teams. I think they just listed the stat.
And I'll say that this is going to be fairly obscure as far as at least one of the teams.
Okay, so down 3-0 to force a 7th game. 3 teams, NBA playoff history. Yeah, literally, I heard the stat, Tom, but I didn't hear the teams. So, and I don't know why they just mentioned it real quick and it didn't mention the teams, which is weird. They would do that, but maybe I didn't hear the right portion. I don't remember, but let's see. Let me try. Let me think a little here. So I don't know. Maybe start me off with the clue because I'm blanking off the top of my head.
So let's see.
Hasn't happened super recent. I don't
think
it
has not happened super recently.
Because I would remember.
2 have happened in our lifetime, but the first one only just.
Okay. Oh, so we were barely alive.
So barely, yeah. And both of those that I'm mentioning were in one particular conference.
Yeah. Was it the year that the Warriors beat the Mavericks or something? They're up 3-0 and then that wasn't the one, was it?
No, that was the Warriors as an 8 seed upsetting the Mavericks with the best team. Although the Mavericks are involved in this one. They're on the side that ultimately won.
Okay. Mavericks. Oh, Mavericks versus Spurs? That's not it?
No.
Okay, because Dallas didn't win a lot of playoff series. So this has got to be early 90s, I'm guessing.
One of them is early 90s.
Now, is it the Mavericks one or no?
No, it's not the Mavericks.
Not the Mavericks. Pistons and Bulls, maybe? No. Mavericks and Supersonics.
No.
Seattle? No.
No.
So they're Western Conference. We're talking Western Conference here.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
2 of them are Western Conference.
Yeah, it's fairly. I'm trying to think because I wouldn't have guessed. I probably wouldn't have guessed
Houston and Dallas.
Not Houston and Dallas.
Trailblazers.
Trailblazers and Dallas. Yeah. It was in 2003. This was the last time that we saw a Game 7 after a 3-0 lead. Blazers, I think they were down 21 points in Game 4, came back to win that game and then win the next 2 before Dallas closed them out.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, there was one in the early 90s, and then there was one way back when. It was an NBA Finals matchup against a team that currently
Celtics and Lakers
exists, and then one team that exists but under a different name.
Minneapolis Lakers. I can't say
not the
word.
Lakers. No. They did play the Lakers in this
Warriors.
postseason. Philadelphia.
No, they weren't. Philadelphia were the Sixers. I don't know. Were they Philadelphia Warriors at one point or something?
They were at one point, but that's not the team. But the team that I'm thinking that ultimately won
is Boston, probably, because they would win everything back then.
Not Boston, but same division.
Same division?
Yeah.
The Knicks.
Yep. In 1951, in the NBA Finals, the New York Knicks forced a Game 7, but ultimately lost to the Rochester Royals, now known
Oh
as the
yeah,
Sacramento Kings.
that's too hard.
And then the
All
other
right.
one was Denver Nuggets. This was in '94, losing to the Jazz. So, yeah, those are the three times that's happened. Really, really obscure, and only once in the NBA Finals.
I don't think it's gonna happen this time, Tom.
Now we'll see. We'll
We'll
have a new
see.
trivia then.
All right, I got five pitchers in the history of baseball have struck out 1,000 different batters. One guy
Okay.
did it recently who is easily like very good career, but compared to the other four on this list,
Mhm.
far and away the worst guy. So
Okay.
one of them is active.
So what that guy I'm fairly certain is Zach Greinke.
Oh, you must have seen it, or no? It is Zach
Well,
Greinke.
the stat that I saw regarding Zach Greinke was that he'd struck out like 17 of the managers in baseball today,
Okay,
which I
yeah,
know is just like a really, really fun
yeah.
statistic.
That's the
Um,
one. So he's a good pitcher. He actually has over 200 wins.
mhm.
ERA around 345. So I mean, he's borderline, but all like, well, I don't know. You never know, but all
Yeah.
likelihood not going to be in the Hall of Fame with how tough baseball is. The other four guys
Mhm. Struck
are
out 1,000
probably
different.
four of the top 10 pitchers of all time, arguably. I mean, it gets tough. It gets tricky.
Mhm.
But these are all
Mhm.
four legends of baseball.
I'm gonna go first off with Nolan Ryan because he struck
Yeah,
out
strikeout
everybody.
king. Yep.
Randy Johnson.
Randy Johnson.
Okay.
Nicely done, Tom.
I'm gonna go with my guy Greg Maddux.
Ooh, I'm impressed. Greg Maddux. That was the tough one. But that two
Oh,
seam fastball,
yeah,
pretty good.
he's
He
my
played
guy.
forever, too.
I was gonna guess him one way or another. Okay, so the last one,
To be honest with you, the last one would have been probably the first one that I guessed. So it's a big name.
Roger Clemens.
Roger Clemens. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a much better trivia than my really obscure, difficult one.
Yeah. Yeah, but that wasn't difficult enough, apparently. I mean, you must have seen the Granky one because that was the tough one. I thought the
Yeah,
other four were pretty easy. I mean, the
yeah,
Maddox maybe not as easy, but Maddox got a lot of strikeouts because he
yeah,
pitched forever.
yeah, like 300 and something wins that he had in his career. Yeah,
Yeah, we're never
the
going to see
drinking
a
one was tough,
300
but
game
yeah,
winner again, Tom. Never
Mhm.
going to happen again. With all these
Yeah,
bullpens, it's going to be tough.
yeah, and just the way that they burn out pitchers nowadays. Yeah, that in itself could be a
I mean,
statement of the week.
Kershaw just got to 200 recently, and he's been the last pitcher, the best pitcher of this generation, quite frankly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame. So in terms of salutes of the week, first off, a salute to Carmelo Anthony, who you
Yeah,
mentioned
I have the
earlier, the
same thing. I figured you
program,
would.
retired, and then also a salute to Jim Brown, an all-time great
Mhm.
sports icon. As far as not just what he did on the field, I think he had like really great longevity for when he was playing running back for the Cleveland Browns, but also a very noted civil activist for rights for a lot of people in this country, spoken out during the civil rights movement, and just an absolute icon who we can barely sum up in an obit, let alone the short little segment that we are doing. But certainly an all-time great athlete, and an all-time great human being. So salute to him as well. My statement is going to be that the LeBron James era of the super team is coming to a close as he's contemplating his retirement. And we're certainly going to be seeing that over the next couple of seasons. And in a way, LeBron James has kind of sort of broken the league in that regard, where we've seen what he did in choosing to, as he is famously quoted, taking his talents to South Beach, joining up with Dwayne Wade, bringing in Chris Bosh as well, to put together a fairly successful, if not, they didn't win 5 or 6 or 7 championships, but winning 2 out of 4 ain't bad, to paraphrase Meatloaf. And this has been a model that a lot of franchises have tried to copy rather unsuccessfully. We saw the Brooklyn Nets go ahead and try to do that and bringing together Kyrie Irving,
The
Kevin Durant,
Sixers.
James Harden. We've seen the Sixers do something similar. We've seen the Suns this year bringing in Kevin Durant in a big trade. And quite frankly, we haven't really seen those sorts of moves bear fruit if we're being perfectly honest. I mean, to get over the hump to win a championship, occasionally, yeah, you do need to go out and you need to get a really big superstar. Think the Toronto Raptors, who were kind of capped as a, top 4, top 5 type of team in the Eastern Conference, but never really a true championship contender until they made a trade to bring in Kawhi Leonard. But I would not say that that's necessarily a super team type of move that they did. I mean, if we look at the NBA Finals over the past, I don't know, we'll say it's like since the LeBron transition era when he went to Miami, just about every single one of these champions is centered around homegrown talent, is centered around drafting and developing their own guys. I mean, the Warriors had success prior to Kevin Durant, and the reason that they were able to bring Kevin Durant was that giant spike in the salary cap that one year that allowed them to just sign him outright, which I'm going to say is anomalous. That worked because they already had a great team in place and then brought in a superstar to that team. They didn't bust up their core, and that's the statement I want to make is that for a lot of these NBA teams, if you have a really good, potentially championship contending team, it's not going to look the same as the LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, or LeBron, Kyrie, Kevin Love, who's kind of at the tail end of his prime. I mean, we're looking at the Nuggets who are in the finals this year. We are looking at the Golden State Warriors, a homegrown team last year over the Boston Celtics, another homegrown team. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Phoenix Suns, to that point, for the most part, homegrown teams. Going back, Lakers, a little bit different there.
Superstar team, Tom.
That was a superstar team where they made a trade for Anthony Davis. They had signed LeBron James this season prior, but that's probably the exception. I mean, Miami Heat mostly homegrown as far as how they brought in Jimmy Butler and everybody else
Jimmy
around.
Butler's not homegrown, and he is a superstar.
But that's not a super team model, is what I'm saying. Like,
sure.
Of course, you need stars to win in the NBA, but going for having 3, 4 guys who are absolute superstars doesn't seem to be the model that works. The model that actually works best is a team that gets some homegrown talent or gets a star and builds around them complementarily. And that's kind of how the NBA has always been, where you have a clear 1, a clear 2, and then solid depth behind that. It's really anomalous to have 3 superstars on a team that haven't been, drafted and developed together, winning an NBA championship. So I think that ultimately, like I said earlier in the program, the Denver Nuggets, all their rotation guys are under contract control for 1 more season. So we very well can see Denver back in this similar position. I'm not so sure that a team like, say, the Phoenix Suns are going to be in that position after getting rid of all of their depth and relying on 2 aging superstars, and then Devin Booker, of course, who is in the prime of his career. But I think that teams are starting to get wise to the whole super team model as far as going out and just trying to accumulate talent. We haven't seen it work for the Clippers as of yet. And I think once LeBron James decides to ride off into the sunset, I think we're going to kind of see an end of that era, and it's going to go back to a little bit, hopefully more of a parity-filled era of basketball where we can see a team like the Bucks, like the Nuggets, break through. I think that's the way that building a team should be done. It's not easy, but we've seen that teams taking the easy route out don't always attain success.
Yeah, I think it's an argument I struggle with because it's the whole same thing where we got obsessed with the analytics with the 3 and the Lakers. And this was just 2-3 years ago. They proved the whole 3-point theory wrong, and they were a super team with LeBron. Just to be clear, LeBron was not the first guy that did the super team. The Boston Celtics did it before LeBron, and that's part of why he did do it. Ray Allen, KG, Paul Pierce, that was very much a super team, Tom.
Well, the counter to that, though, is that was Danny Ainge and the Celtics going out and trading away picks and young players to acquire them. And they weren't blowing up a good team. They were a team that's a bottom feeder. And remember, Doc Rivers was on the hot seat. No, it
is
what
you want. It's a super team.
It is a super team, but it's a super team in a different model from what I'm saying, as far as taking a good team like the Phoenix Suns and blowing it up to bring in superstars. I know it's a semantical argument, but it's a little bit different in that regard.
I think that it's all about getting the right fit. I don't necessarily agree or disagree with your argument. I think you can win without a super team. I think you can win with the super team as well. I mean, we saw the Warriors do it, the Celtics. Obviously, San Antonio was a developed super team, but that was a super team. You have three amazing players together. The Warriors, I mean, obviously they drafted well with, Steph and Clay. That was a super team. So I know they weren't all acquired, but I mean, we did have acquired super teams. Miami, Boston, the Lakers more recently, LeBron and Davis at the time. I mean, you can make a case at that time they were both top 5 players in the league, and they didn't really have a third guy. So I think a lot of it has to do with fit. If you can put a super team together with the right guys around them, you can win. Like LeBron with the Heat, they had Ray Allen to shoot threes. Mario Chalmers wasn't terrible. Shane Battier, Mike Miller. It's all about fit. Whether that's with having a super team or having one guy who's the main leader, it could go either way. I don't think you can get a super team and just completely blow up the rest of your team. But if you can manage to get a super team and still have pieces around that fit, does not have to be superstars, but pieces that fit, you could still win with that model. There's so many different ways to win. And I don't think there's a surefire way of you have to win with the super team or the super team doesn't work. I think you're oversimplifying it personally. I think it can work or it can't work based on the situation. I mean, if the Suns made this move for Durant 2 years ago when Chris Paul was closer to his prime, it might have worked. They happened to make the move when Chris Paul finally had that really bad season. Because the Suns right now, Tom, they're the team that was the closest to the Nuggets so far these playoffs. So I see where you're coming from. I don't entirely disagree with you, but I don't entirely agree with you either. I don't think there's one model for success. I mean, I know it sounds like very, very simple, very sort of like, I don't know if it's a cop. I don't know the right term to make, but it's all about having the right players that fit together. That could be a super team, or it could be one superstar, a clear number one, clear number two. I think there's many ways to win. I do agree with you to an extent that we'll see less of these super teams because they're not as successful as expected. But I do think that a super team could still work if they have the right pieces together. My statement of the week, I'm also going to go a LeBron James theme statement. I did have written down on my salute as well, Carmelo Anthony on a great career. Fantastic career for Melo, top 10 all-time in career points, easily a Hall of Famer. Jim Brown passing away, obviously 9 seasons, Tom, 8 times of the league in rushing. Iconic player. My statement is I'm getting sick and tired of these annoying fans. And this is why the GOAT debate gets ruined, Tom, because you have to respect Michael Jordan and you have to respect LeBron James. And this is a little bit more of the Jordan fans, but even LeBron fans do this too. Both sides of the argument, instead of using, like, they ridicule the players. I mean, obviously, when you're making the point, you got to put the negatives out there too. But the reason why MJ's the GOAT or the reason why LeBron's the GOAT, use more of what the guy has done. Because there's people out there who say LeBron's terrible. LeBron's terrible. He couldn't do it against the tough guys in Jordan's era. He got swept. Stephen A. Smith, by the way, one of the most ignorant people out there, went on the air and said that Michael Jordan has never been swept. That is completely inaccurate. The fact that the head of ESPN's body would go on the air and they would let him go on the air and not hold him accountable. Michael Jordan was swept twice in his career. Anyone can get swept. It's a team game. Jordan's been swept twice. LeBron's been swept 3 times. So this narrative that Michael Jordan would never be swept, he got swept in the first round, Tom, which I would argue is worse than getting swept in the conference finals or the NBA finals. So there's just this whole narrative of whatever side you're on. It's just completely crazy because, I mean, you have the Jordan fans saying that, the guys this era aren't tough. LeBron couldn't put up with the abuse. Then you have the LeBron fans saying these guys aren't athletes in the other era. LeBron could do this, you could do that. I mean, both sides of the argument. Michael Jordan does not suck. LeBron James does not suck. They would be great in both eras. It's just very hard to take the people seriously because there could be great arguments made for both guys. I mean, LeBron's got the longevity. #1 all-time points, regular season, postseason. He's also like top 3 all-time in assists. He does a lot to make his teammates better. Then you can argue Jordan, the best scorer of all time, never lost in the finals, puts up 35, 40 whenever he needs to. Great on both sides of the ball. There's many debates you can make on both guys, but I think this debate gets so heated, people get so passionate that they feel the need to ridicule the other guy. Please stop. Please stop. Just stop doing this. It's out of hand. And Stephen A. Smith, check yourself at the door, brother. Michael Jordan was swept in the playoffs twice. Literally Stephen A.'s words. Michael Jordan would never get swept in the playoffs. He would. And it's not because Jordan wasn't great, because it's a team game. Jordan put up 63 against the Celtics, the playoff record for points. He got swept that series, Tom. So LeBron at 38 years old was almost at a triple-double. I mean, if you round up, he averaged a triple-double at 38 years old.
Yeah.
And he's getting called out for getting swept. This is ridiculous. So stop the disrespect. You're on MJ's side, that's fine. You're on LeBron's side, that's fine. Focus in more on the argument of why your guy is so good instead of ridiculing and hurting the other guy, because it's getting out of hand. I mean, this is getting out of hand. It's just ridiculous.
I mean, there's a reason why I've retired from that particular segment of sports fandom, is because, like there is no proven right or wrong answer. I understand for ratings perspectives, whether you're taking the Michael Wilbon, Stephen A. Smith, because they saw Michael Jordan at his peak and they were professionals at that point in time, or whether you look at Nick Wright and some of the other guys today who are in kind of that same position, except they're seeing LeBron. And I understand it's for ratings, it's for fodder, it's for engagement that they say these that they make these arguments in such unequivocal terms, as if there is an absolute right or an absolute wrong answer. That's why I'm of the mind of not getting into that sort of thing and saying these are both all-time great athletes for different reasons in different eras. Product of their time. Yeah, Michael Jordan, greatest of his era. LeBron James, greatest of his era. And it's important to make that distinction because there are different rules. There are different playoff formats. There's all sorts of things that are different from one to another, which why for me, just from like a mental perspective, it's a weight off my mind to not even be trying to make this sort of debate and getting all, riled up about it, because like you said, there's a lot of blowing out of other candles, and that's not what sports ought to be about. Sports ought to be about everybody is included, everybody has their own merits, and you can have favorites or not favorites. I mean, people talk about Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. I prefer to talk about favorite quarterback of an era. For me, it was Donovan McNabb. Like, that's the sort of thing that I kind of like. I prefer to think about sports in those terms, because you actually learn and facilitate a lot more conversation and better conversation when you're opening up to that sort of perspective, as opposed to pitchforks and torches, right and wrong.
Well, look, and Tom, I think we can have this argument civilly, though. I mean, I get what you're saying, and I know that's your opinion, but I think that we can actually have the GOAT debate, but I don't want it to turn into this whole thing of like just ridiculing the other guy. It's just like, it's just too much. I mean, we can have your take. That works too for me. We can have my take where you can have a civil debate. It's just getting out of hand. It's just kind of crazy. But
absolutely,
I think that's going to do it for us today. Excellent show. Next week, it's going to be the NBA Finals preview. So finals start next Thursday. Our next show is going to be Wednesday, most likely. So we'll have a full matchup, whether this ends tonight, whether it ends Friday night, whatever night it is. Well, the finals will be set. I'm pretty sure we'll go the same way, but looking forward to talking about it. We'll do more of an in-depth analysis, NBA Finals preview. Cannot wait for that, Tom. We'll see you next week.